I grabbed you.
Your energy, the whole audience, you know, the audience, the restaurant was into it, and so it was just like, let's all sing. And
Yeah.
so we all started
So we sang
singing.
Hey Jude together.
He's one of Hollywood's most beloved stars, a man admired not just for his iconic roles, but for his humility and kindness. Yet behind the calm smile and quiet demeanor lies a story filled with devastating loss, heartbreak, and tragedy. At 60 years old, the life of Keanu Reeves is as inspiring as it is painfully heartbreaking. Keanu Reeves has been called the Internet's boyfriend, a Hollywood superstar who has somehow remained humble despite decades of fame. From The Matrix to John Wick, his career has defined action cinema for generations. But unlike many celebrities who flaunt wealth and excess, Keanu has lived quietly, giving away much of his fortune and often choosing solitude over extravagance. Yet what makes Keanu's story resonate so deeply isn't just his talent or generosity. It's the pain he has endured. Pain that would have broken most people. Behind the stoic demeanor lies a man who has survived unimaginable tragedies, from the loss of loved ones to battles with grief and loneliness. So how did Keanu Reeves, one of the most respected men in Hollywood, come to carry such a heavy burden? And what tragedies shaped the man behind the legend? Keanu Charles Reeves was born on September 2, 1964, in Beirut, Lebanon, to Patricia Taylor, a costume designer, and Samuel Nowlin Reeves, a geologist. His early years were anything but stable. His father abandoned the family when Keanu was just a toddler, leaving Patricia to raise him and his sister largely on her own. They moved often, from Lebanon to Australia, then New York, and finally Toronto. With each move came instability, new schools, and the struggle of adapting to different environments. For a young boy, it was a life filled with uncertainty. Adding to the difficulty was Keanu's battle with dyslexia. Reading was a constant struggle, and academics didn't come easily. He often felt like an outsider, misunderstood by teachers and peers. The classroom was a place of frustration, not belonging. Yet even in those turbulent years, Keanu found solace in performance. Drama and hockey became his escapes, one fueling his creativity, the other his competitive spirit. Hockey, especially, was his passion. Nicknamed The Wall, Keanu was a skilled goalie with dreams of playing professionally. But a serious injury shattered that dream, forcing him to pivot to acting. This early loss, the death of a dream before it ever truly began, would be the first of many heartbreaks to shape Keanu's life. But what other tragedies would transform this quiet, artistic boy into the man Hollywood would later know as both its most unlikely superstar and its most sorrowful soul? In the 1980s, Keanu's career began to take off. Roles in films like River's Edge and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure showcased his versatility. He could play both the brooding outsider and the goofy, lovable everyman. By the 1990s, he had cemented his place as a leading man with films like Speed and later The Matrix, which transformed him into an international icon. But even as his career soared, Keanu's personal life was marked by tragedy. In the early 90s, his best friend and fellow actor, River Phoenix, died of a drug overdose outside the Viper Room in Los Angeles. River's death devastated Keanu, who described him as a brother. The loss was a painful reminder of how fragile life could be, and it cast a shadow over his rise to fame. In interviews, Keanu rarely spoke about his grief, but those who knew him said River's passing left a permanent scar. Keanu learned early in his career that success and tragedy often coexist, that behind the glamour of Hollywood, loss could come suddenly, cruelly, and without explanation. And this was only the beginning. Greater heartbreaks still lay ahead, ones that would define not just his life, but his very identity. So what devastating events would push Keanu Reeves into becoming one of Hollywood's most quietly tragic figures? If there is one tragedy that forever marked Keanu Reeves' life, it is the heartbreaking story of Jennifer Syme. In the late 1990s, Keanu met Jennifer, a bright and talented woman working in the entertainment industry. Their connection was instant. Friends described them as inseparable, deeply in love and hopeful about their future together. For Keanu, who often kept his personal life private, this relationship seemed to offer stability, joy, and the promise of a family. In 1999, their joy turned to heartbreak. Jennifer became pregnant, and Keanu was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a father. But in the 8th month of her pregnancy, tragedy struck. Their baby girl, Ava Archer Syme Reeves, was stillborn. The loss devastated both Keanu and Jennifer. The grief was overwhelming, and the tragedy put an unbearable strain on their relationship. Although they remained close, the weight of their sorrow ultimately caused them to drift apart. But the pain didn't end there. Just a year later, in April 2001, Jennifer Syme was killed in a car accident in Los Angeles. At only 28 years old, her life ended suddenly and tragically, leaving Keanu shattered. For Keanu, the loss of both his daughter and the woman he loved was unimaginable. He withdrew even further from the spotlight, channeling his energy into his work while carrying a grief that never truly healed. This was more than a tragedy. It was a turning point. It explained so much about the man the public would come to know: reserved, quiet, humble, and deeply compassionate. Keanu understood loss in a way few could imagine, and it shaped the way he lived his life. But how does someone recover from so much heartbreak in such a short time? For Keanu, the answer was resilience, but at a heavy cost. After Jennifer's death, Keanu Reeves became known as the sad Hollywood star. Paparazzi photos often showed him sitting alone, eating by himself, or riding the subway in solitude. The media dubbed him Sad Keanu, a meme that went viral years later, but behind the jokes was a man quietly navigating unimaginable grief. Keanu never remarried, and he rarely spoke publicly about his losses. Instead, he turned inward, focusing on his career and finding meaning in small, everyday acts of kindness. He was often spotted giving up his subway seat to strangers, chatting warmly with fans, or quietly donating millions to children's hospitals and cancer research, causes close to his heart, as his sister Kim battled leukemia for many years. Friends and co-stars described him as deeply empathetic, someone who carried his pain with dignity and who refused to let fame define him. Unlike many Hollywood stars, Keanu chose modesty over luxury. He lived simply, often wearing the same clothes, driving ordinary vehicles, and avoiding the trappings of celebrity culture. But loneliness was a constant companion. Despite his fame, Keanu spent much of his life alone. Interviews revealed glimpses of this solitude. He admitted that grief never goes away, that it stays with you, becoming part of who you are. And yet, even in loneliness, Keanu never allowed bitterness to define him. Instead, he chose kindness. His pain became the foundation of his compassion. His solitude became the reason fans around the world connected with him so deeply. Still, the question lingers. How much can one man endure before the tragedies of his past weigh too heavily on his future? When Keanu Reeves took on the role of John Wick in 2014, audiences were stunned. The action film, originally expected to be a modest hit, became a global phenomenon. But what truly resonated wasn't just the stylish fight choreography or the gun-fu sequences, it was the emotional core of the story. John Wick is a man defined by loss. In the opening minutes of the film, we learn that his wife has died and left him only a small dog to remember her by. When that dog is killed, it sets John on a path of vengeance. To some, it seemed like a simple action movie setup, but for Keanu Reeves, the role cut far deeper. Fans and critics alike couldn't help but notice the parallels. Keanu, like John Wick, was a man marked by grief. He knew what it meant to lose loved ones suddenly and to live with a pain that never truly healed. His performance wasn't just acting, it was lived experience brought to the screen. In interviews, Keanu admitted that he connected with John Wick on a profound level. Playing the character allowed him to channel his own heartbreak into something powerful, something audiences could feel in every frame. That authenticity was what made the role unforgettable. It's no coincidence that the John Wick series has become one of the most beloved franchises of his career. Through the character, Keanu gave the world a glimpse into his own grief, transformed into art, catharsis, and, ultimately, resilience. But while John Wick reflected his pain, Keanu's real life was still a solitary journey. Which raises the question, how did he maintain his humanity in a world where fame often erodes compassion? Despite his heartbreaking past, or perhaps because of it, Keanu Reeves has built a reputation unlike any other Hollywood star. While most actors are remembered for their roles, Keanu is remembered just as much for his kindness. Stories of his generosity have become legendary. He quietly gave away millions from his Matrix earnings to crew members, stunt teams, and special effects workers who made the films possible. He's been known to treat set workers to meals, surprise strangers with small acts of kindness, and donate to hospitals without ever attaching his name to the contribution. Perhaps the most striking thing about Keanu is his humility. Unlike many celebrities who live in mansions with entourages, Keanu often travels alone, eats at small diners, and rides public transportation. To him, fame isn't a reason to stand above others. It's an opportunity to connect. Co-stars frequently describe him as the most down-to-earth person in Hollywood. Sandra Bullock once recalled how, during Speed, Keanu surprised her by showing up at her house with champagne and truffles after she casually mentioned she had never tried them. Another co-star described how Keanu personally carried heavy equipment on set so the crew wouldn't have to. But these stories aren't just anecdotes. They paint a picture of a man who has chosen kindness as his way of coping with pain. Where others might have become bitter or self-destructive, Keanu chose empathy. It's this rare quality that makes fans love him even more. Keanu Reeves isn't just admired for the characters he plays, but for the person he is when the cameras stop rolling. Still, beneath the kindness, the tragedies remain. And as Keanu enters his 60s, the question becomes, has he finally found peace? Or is the shadow of grief something he will carry for the rest of his life? At 60 years old, Keanu Reeves stands at a crossroads between extraordinary success and lingering heartbreak. Most actors his age are slowing down, but Keanu remains one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, carrying blockbuster franchises like John Wick and The Matrix. His physical dedication, training for months to perfect stunts, shows a determination that defies time. And yet beneath the action hero exterior lies a man marked by reflection. For Keanu, turning 60 isn't just another milestone. It's a reminder of how much he has endured. He's survived abandonment in childhood, the loss of his best friend, the stillbirth of his daughter, the death of Jennifer Syme, and years of solitude. Each tragedy left its imprint, shaping not only the man, but the choices he makes every day. But in recent years, fans have noticed something new: glimmers of peace. Keanu has found companionship with artist Alexandra Grant, a relationship that shocked the world when it went public but brought visible joy to his life. For once, the headlines weren't about tragedy, but about hope. Seeing Keanu smile alongside someone who seemed to understand him reminded fans that even the most broken hearts can find light again. Still, the question lingers. Has Keanu truly found happiness, or is he simply learning to live with his pain? At 60, his legacy is no longer just about the films he's made, but about the resilience he embodies. His life tells us that tragedy doesn't have to define you, but it never fully leaves you either. And that's what makes his story so heartbreaking and so inspiring all at once. Keanu Reeves' life is a story of extremes: fame, fortune, and global recognition on one side, unimaginable heartbreak and personal loss on the other. Few celebrities carry such a contrast between public triumph and private sorrow. At 60, Keanu remains one of the most respected figures in Hollywood, not because of his roles, but because of his humanity. He has taught the world that grief doesn't have to make you bitter. It can make you kinder. That tragedy doesn't have to destroy you. It can shape you into someone who inspires millions. The tragedy of Keanu Reeves is that his life has been marked by loss at every turn. But the miracle of Keanu Reeves is that he has carried that loss with grace, humility, and compassion. So the next time you watch him on screen, whether dodging bullets in The Matrix or fighting for vengeance in John Wick, remember this: the man behind the character has faced battles far greater than any Hollywood script could ever imagine. What do you think? Has Keanu finally found peace? Or is he still a man haunted by his past? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories of the stars you thought you knew. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the ones written in scripts. They're the ones lived in silence, behind the smile of a man who has endured more than most could ever bear.